So for this holiday season, as in Halloween, I did a one-shot of a role-playing game. I usually play D&D, but this time I wanted to try something different, so I tried Monster of the Week, which is a game I've played once before, but I've never DM'd it. And also I didn't want to spend money, so I didn't buy it. I just used all these random online resources, but it went really well. So here's a little recap. Monster of the Week is an RPG that's kind of based around Buffy the Vampire Slayer, those type of shows where there's a monster of the week and you need to fight them, and it means that your team is a monster hunting team. So our monster hunting team consisted of 3 high schoolers and 1 teacher, and at Pemberton High School. So the 3 high schoolers were Jimothy, who was the chosen, we had Sam, who was the mundane, and we had Chadwick, who was the wronged. So those 3 were in school just talking, hanging out at the hallway. It's the day before Halloween, it's the Friday, and the Halloween's on a Saturday, how it is actually in 2020. But there's not a pandemic going on, thankfully. So that's kind of how the setup is. And they're all talking, and none of them have costumes on. I guess they're all either like too cool or think they're too good to have costumes on, how schools always do those school spirit days. And they're just kind of discussing what they're going to do if they're going to, try to find any parties for the weekend, especially for Halloween. And as they're doing this, someone actually approaches us, someone in a plague doctor costume, and it's Dan, who's a pretty cool kid. He's usually pretty quiet though, so it's kind of weird that he's approaching them to invite them to a party, but he invites them to, his big Halloween blast out of the Gresham Manor. So it's a manor that's been abandoned for years. There was some, people that went missing there, but none of our PCs really know they really care. They're just excited for a party. So they immediately sign on, and this guy sends them the Facebook invites. They take them, and they're ready to go. It's at 8 p.m. It starts at 8 p.m., and he tells them to arrive fashionably late. He guesses he's not going to be ready right away. And as he's talking, our last player, which was Mr. Joshua, who was the teacher, he's the spell slinger, walks by and kind of hears about this. And also, he sees that on the invite is every kid in school, more or less. And the kids can see this too, every single kid, even the nerds, people you wouldn't normally invite to this, so like me and other people. I'm not in high school anymore, but I would have not been invited to this party. But in this case, everyone was invited to this party. So, Josh finds that kind of weird, and he actually follows Dan a little bit as Dan breaks off from the group, and he sees that Dan's talking to the other kids, and he's inviting other people, and Joshua kind of confronts him, and he's like, hey, this isn't how parties go. Parties, you invite the cool kids, not the nerds. And I guess Mr. Joshua, the teacher, is reliving his past a little bit and just making sure that the nerds aren't invited, but Dan said, hey, this is for everyone, and don't even try to call the cops on this party or anything like that. My dad told him not to come to the house tonight. So that's kind of what happens, and Joshua finds that weird, which it is, and he leaves and goes to talk to the kids again, who have all decided to go to this party. They talk with Joshua, and they even invite him, but he does not want to go. Unsurprisingly, he is a high school history teacher, and he does not want to show up at a Halloween party, even though he could wear a costume, and Jimothy mentions this. He's like, hey, you could just wear a costume to wear something that covers your face, but he's not willing to take that risk. So he says, I'm just going to break off from you guys as you guys get ready to go throughout the school day, and we'll see each other at the party. I'll be outside of it, you guys will be in it, and we'll make sure nothing weird is going on, because they all kind of suspect something weird is happening at this party. So we fast forward through the school today. None of them do any research or think of that or anything like that. They're just ready to get to this party. So after school, the kids end up at Sam's dad's place. He is owner of a mattress store, so that's kind of where they're at, and they're the Mattress Kids, that's what they're known as, and they're talking about what Halloween costumes they want to wear. They decide with Marvel stuff. Sam's dad tries to get him to wear his, company's slogan and uniform and promote the business, which Sam actually does do. He takes the sign, he's going to be able to spin it at the party and draw up a lot of interest for the mattress store. So he does that. The rest of them say, no, we're not going to dress up as your employees, and they just go as Marvel characters, and they head over to the party. While they're doing all of that, Mr. Joshua is already at the party. He arrived an hour early to stake everything out. So he's at 7, he's walked around the house, he's noticed there's a lot of vines on the inside. You can see Dan moving around. Dan is setting up all the drinks. They're setting up drinks right by the entrance, where you can give it to people, and he's also setting up snacks, and he set up all the decorations, and there's a lot of vines around the house, and there's vines on the inside, but he thinks things they're kind of decorations at this point. So that's kind of what he sees, and he also notices that the first people that pull up are the 3 kids, and they get out, they pull up at 8:01, so they're the first ones. There before even the other nerds arrive, and they walk up there, and Dan is very surprised. He was like, oh, this is what fashionably late is for you all, and they say it is. He offers them a drink. He pours it out, pours it into a cup, and he puts it down on, he doesn't actually hand it to him, he puts it down on a table. And Sam picks it up, and he doesn't drink it. And then Chad picks it up, and he does. So after the kids get their punch or don't get the punch, they just start going to the party. Some of the other nerds walk in, they start getting their drinks, and they start drinking them. And they have a look around. So Chadwick finds that there's a beer pong table, looks for beer, and the only drink is that mixed drink that Dan was handing out. So that's what he fills up all the cups with, and he eventually wants to play someone, right? And a guy bursts in, a dude that's covered in grease and is built like a bodybuilder, and that's what he has his costume is, because he's only wearing a Speedo, and his name is Brad. So they do a little beer pong thing, which Chad wins. And then our Chosen has a flashback, right? How the Chosen always has flashbacks, and they have it as he's walking through this house, and he can see that something really bad happened, and he can see that it happened leading into the basement. There's something down there that's bad, and the door's closed. He doesn't even try to open it. This is kind of when the party's already going, and this makes him realize he needs to go talk to Sam and get everyone together and investigate this basement. So he goes to get Sam, and Sam this whole time has been spinning and broadcasting the little business he has to all the people. So he's been doing that, and he's drawn up a lot of support. And as Sam is spinning, Joshua calls him up and is like, "Hey man, you guys need to get your head in the game. You're playing beer pong. You're walking around. I can see that Jimothy is talking to some woman." So Jimothy, on his way to talk to Sam, gets distracted by Amy, who's in one of his classes, and just starts flirting with her. Sam gets his head in the game. Sam gets Chad and Jimothy, pulls them away from their things, and they go investigate the basement. But it's locked. It's locked. So they're not able to get in. They have to look for a way in. So Jimothy starts looking around for keys, opening random drawers. As the other two, as they're trying to open the door still, they hear some puking from the bathroom next to them. And they can see that in that bathroom is one of the nerds that came in with them originally. He came in a hazmat suit, and now he's puking up. He's not having a good time, and they kind of quiz him about different things as he's vomiting, and Dan comes in and is like, "Hey, what are you guys doing? Let's move this guy somewhere safer." So he takes him and he moves him upstairs, and none of the PCs follow him, none of the hunters do, so they're still down there looking around the kitchen. Josh on the outside is getting bored and starts investigating the outside, and he sees that there is a kind of a weak spot in the basement. The kids have told him that the basement's locked, so he's trying to find another way in. And there's a weak spot on the side of the house where a lot of the vines are coming out. They've noticed at this point that lots and lots of vines are growing. So all three of the kids come to the outside and are checking it out at Josh's, asking. He calls them up and he tells them, "Hey, come check this out." So they come and they do that. And Jimothy breaks off from them and says, "Hey, I'm going to watch Dan and make sure he doesn't come out and interrupt this." So Chad and Sam go outside and they have their knives out and they're going to go cut the vines, right? Because they want to see, they want to get rid of the vines, they want to get under and see where this, what this weak spot is. And as they try to cut them, Josh lights up their knives. He tries to use his magic, but instead of increasing the damage they do and adding magic, they make them shine brightly and start playing music. And everyone in the crowd, right, that's near their side of the mansion, they look over and they look at these people, and thinking really fast, Sam grabs his sign spinner and he just starts spinning it and doing all these tricks, and his hands are lighting up because the knife and the sounds are playing, and people get really into it, and it distracts them. Unfortunately, he messes up right at the end and he kind of hits Chad in the face, and it makes Chad a little delirious for a second. So after the kids do their distraction, which also happens to distract Jimothy, they go back to cutting their vines. All the other people have started paying attention to the party. Josh puts his magic on the knives again to make them really strong and get through those vines, and they're able to just slice them through them this time. His magic works, and they're going through that. Jimothy on the inside notices that Dan comes around the corner and starts yelling at him, right? He's furious. So he starts running outside, and Dan is trying to shoo off the kids. He's saying "Hey, you guys are destroying the house. We don't want people, out here with knives. Get out of here." And to quell his fury, Sam is like, "Hey, no, it's fine, man. Look at these vines." And he cuts more vines and throws them at Dan, just to show him, "Hey, they're vines. They're kind of weird, but it's safe. They're just vines." And Dan freaks out at this point. He says, "I've had enough." And he moves his hand in one motion, and vines from the house come off, and they grab onto Sam, and they start dragging him towards the house. And Mr. Joshua, upon seeing this, summons his combat magic and sends out a lightning bolt towards him. And it flies at Dan, but it misses just to the side. And Dan whips around looking for him, right? At this point, Jimothy has ran outside, and Chadwick has jumped into the forest, scared of what's happening, And then Jimothy runs up behind Dan as he's like looking for the target that was shooting out magic at him and starts choking him out. As he's choking him, he gets under the plague doctor mask that Dan has been wearing and starts burning his face upon like touching him. And Jimothy doesn't really notice that, but the guy's screaming and he's being choked out. So during this time, while this is happening, Sam is still, on the ground, and he tries to cut his way off through the vine, but he's not able to. His knife doesn't, cut far enough, and he gets dragged under the house, and he's gone. The rest of them don't see him. And then Chadwick sees this and looks at Dan, who's being choked out, and wants to help. So he runs up. Chadwick tries to move the almost unconscious Dan at this point, because Jimothy's choking him out, into the bushes to try to hide him, like the bottom half of him. But the vines reach out and grab onto Chadwick and start pulling him under the house as well. Chadwick tries to slash his way out and is not able to. And Dan gets up and uses his magic to run super fast and is also not able to make it in time. But Jimothy just watches as his friend is being dragged under the house, and he's like, "It'll be fine, man. Absolutely. We want to be under the basement anyways, right? So just go down there." And this is as he's choking out Dan, and it'll be fine. I'll want to come down anyways, so I'll probably come down too. As Chadwick is screaming and being dragged, and then Chadwick's gone under the house. Josh gets there, and Dan has just fallen asleep with the seared mark on his face, and they're trying to decide what to do. And Josh is like, "I guess you're right, let's get down there," and he shoots more magic at the vines. And then him and Jimothy kind of get in an argument, like right away, where they for some reason they were on like the same page, but now they're not. But the vines whip out and grab Mr. Josh anyways and start ripping him down. And Jimothy, keeping his very nonchalant attitude, doesn't help him at all. He just tries to slide in with the vines as they pull Mr. Joshua under the house. He slides in too, and now everyone is in the basement. But cutting to when Sam first got dragged into the basement, he gets up and he looks around, and it's a very musky basement filled with vines on everywhere. The vines that grabbed him have let go and kind of reached back up, and they're grabbing other people. And the vines are all around the room, and you can kind of see they all kind of coalesce into a big amorphous blob creature. Has like spore plantish look to it. In the middle of its face, in the middle of its body, is a face that's like open and screaming, more or less. And he sees that, and out of it just dumps gallons of some green, oozy spore liquid into a pail, and some minion dressed up like a servant grabs that pail and goes and pours it in a big vat of like red mixture drink, the same one that they're handing out at the party, and is like mixing it up and preparing it. And as you notice all of that, you can see that the vines are kind of coming towards him. The monster has recognized him after it has just dumped all of this spore stuff. And he also hears, as the vines are coming around the corner, he hears that someone is dragging something thudding down the stairs into the basement. He can see that another minion comes and has a person that they're dragging. And then the vines attack, so he tries to swipe those off, and he's able to. He doesn't really hurt the monster, and it's able to hurt him a bit, but he keeps it off. And right as he's doing that, in comes Chadwick getting dumped into the ground. And Chadwick at this point is real dizzy, because Chadwick also drank a lot of the stuff during the beer pong tournament, so they're seeing the effects, the same effects that if you look at the fainted people, they have like puke on them, and Chadwick has to resist the urge to puke and they faint, and he's definitely like kind of like delirious and can't even get his gun out of his holster, which he had put in there, so he has to resort back to his knife as more vines attack. So Sam and Chadwick cut off the vines and are able to cut them back, but this time Sam, they get around his legs and they pull him towards the monster. Just as that's happening, two more people get thrown down. Josh gets whipped down, and Jimothy just slides down and looks really nice, gets all ready to fight. Has had no danger or impact yet as the chosen one. Jimothy looks around and reads the bad situation. Sam is being pulled. There's a delirious Chadwick, and Josh is just getting up from being pulled down into this dusty, viney basement. And he pulls out his chosen slingshot, which is his chosen weapon. He starts firing off at the big spore creature. It hits true, and it lets go of Sam, who's pretty close to it though at this point, been dragged pretty close. Josh gets up from this while this is going on, and he looks over at the other minion that's dragging people down, and he runs and attacks it. It's not in the fight yet, but it is dragging more and more people down into this basement. So he runs up and he punches this creature, and as he does that, it grabs its knife and it jams it into his side, which he falls over. Chadwick is finally able to come to out of their deliriousness, and they run over and they slap some like bandages and gauze onto Mr. Joshua's side as he starts tumbling and fighting with the monster and is able to stabilize his wounds as him and the monster fight on the ground. Then Steven, who has now been let go, gets up and hears Mr. Jimothy yell that the things are weak to human touch. Sam gets up and he slams his hands onto the monster and it screeches, and out of its mouth shoots the same sporish green liquid, and it covers him entirely, dealing a bunch of damage and making him have to resist the urge to puke. But it has taken a bunch of damage, and Mr. Jimothy shoots off more pellets as he's looking any way to help Sam. He doesn't see a real easy way besides just fighting it, so he shoots some more, and then he runs up and he presses his hands into it as well, and the thing screeches and is searing from all the touch that's being applied to it. Sam is knocked back a little bit, but Jimothy is able to get in there and get his hands on it. It looks like it's like in a really bad shape, so Mr. Joshua noticed that, and he kicks off from the monster he's on the ground with and slides along the ground, and he shoots off a last bolt of magic, and it slams into the monster. It's electrical magic, so it arcs around it, and it bubbles up, and it explodes into a green mist and spore, and it covers the whole room. All the characters take damage from this, and they all have to resist the urge to puke, but only one of them succeeds, Jimothy. And Jimothy actually even dodges all of the explosion, even though he's right next to it, he's able to dodge it all. And he's not affected by the puking at all, so he's totally fine standing there. Everyone else is hurling their guts out onto the ground and is just having a terrible time. But he's having a good time. So that's how the fight ends. The minions, they fall over dead. They had vines like attached to like their back of the head, and it ran all along their spine, and they've fallen over, passed away. And the heroes have won the fight. They've killed the monster. After this, the team goes and they help however they can. So Chadwick goes and flips everyone on their side so they don't choke on their own puke. Jimothy runs and tries to find Amy, who he pulls out from the people out of the basement and walks upstairs. He looks and he tries to like resuscitate her with his magic and calling forth magic, because they're linked in some capacity. He knows that they're chosen, and Josh tells him that there's some distant past length where they should be together, but his magic doesn't work, and this must not be the moment. It must be in the future somewhere. But she is safe. And then Sam calls the cops and the ambulance, and he has to convince them to come because they're saying, hey, we were told not to come here. And he's like, there's dead bodies, everyone's unconscious, and they're like, okay, we have to come. And then Mr. Joshua runs away because he's a teacher and does not want to be filled in a mansion filled with teenagers that are all unconscious. That's not a good look. So he runs away. The cops come. Sam communicates everything that happened to all of them. They believe him. He tries to like communicate a little bit of like the weird food poisoning. Maybe there's something like that, something non-monstery. And the cops are like, so you don't think it's just all of the alcohol everyone drank? These are new kids. All these kids drink alcohol. They puked all over. That's just what it is. So they chalk it up to that. And that it was an old house, so there was a mossy basement. So that's kind of how he ends. He ends sitting on his car, and just waiting for the day to come, because it was a very long night, and it is over, but it's also not. And then Chadwick runs off before the police get there. Doesn't want to deal with it. Makes sure everyone's like safe as they can be, and then leaves. And that leaves us with just our last person, Jimothy, who goes with the paramedics in Amy's ambulance and makes sure that she gets the care she needs. Jimothy has to lie and say he's her brother, but that's enough, and they take it. So that's where our session ends. Everyone apart, but they've all taken down the monster together. So that's what our Halloween Monster of the Week session is. It's a great system. Absolutely recommend that you try playing it. It's a lot of fun. It moves really fast compared to D&D, especially narratively. So it was about a 4-hour session, and we got like a pretty long video out of it. So it was a lot of fun. Definitely recommend it, and have a good Halloween.